What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Burglar with a W. Um, I know I've been talking about granddad lore and dad lore, and this kind of goes along with that. Um, but I had a thought today. I'm sitting on the couch. I'm back home from Gardner State Park, by the way. Um, but had a thought today. I was sitting on the couch, and sometimes, right? And I don't know if you've ever felt this way, and I think a lot more people may feel this way every once in a while than are willing to admit it, probably. Um, but I was looking around and just letting my mind wander, which isn't as crazy as it used to be, right? Because I started taking ADHD meds a couple weeks now. I've been on it for 2.5 weeks, I guess. Um, so my mind wandering is more of a meandering now, a pleasant stroll, if you will, rather than kind of a frenetic cutscene type situation that it used to be, jumping between subjects and all of that kind of stuff. Um, but I was looking around and thinking and just kind of sitting there, you know, and I felt like maybe I'm living somebody else's life, right? And like I said, it's not quite the same, right, as imposter syndrome. Um, Although sometimes I feel like that as well, right, where I'm kind of just pretending to know what I'm doing. Um, I'm playing a character, you know, um, but not really. It's different, right? And why this kind of still falls in with granddad lore, dad lore stuff is I think about how I grew up and where I am now. And not that I had a bad childhood. Don't think that, right? We had adversity, we had struggles, like a lot of people do. But I was born not with every advantage, but with quite a few advantages, right? Um, my mother and father were married, right? My mother was college educated. My dad had some college. I don't think he ever finished his bachelor's degree, but he had some college. Um, both worked. Um, my mom was home when I was younger and then went back to work as my brother and I got older. Um, so, I don't ever remember a time when I was living with my parents anyway, um, that we struggled, right? The lights were on, there was food in the fridge. I don't remember being hungry or going without, right? Did we have everything, every brand new thing? No. Um, so so it's not, when I say how I grew up, it's not that. It's more around the time I was 13, right? My dad passed away from a heart attack. So I went to school and I remember, right? Of course I remember it. It was 4 days after my 13th birthday. I just turned 13. And we were taking I believe at the time it was still the toss test. Um, and it was toss riding. And normally I would rock through those things really quickly, right? But I remember that day, for whatever reason, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take my time because I can take my time. So I just sat around, right? Well, long story short, we can go into this in more detail at another time, but my dad passed away, had a heart attack. And while I was at school, right, luckily somebody else had followed him to the house. He left work. Somebody followed him home, all that kind of stuff. So we didn't have to walk in and find him or anything like that. But when you're 13, and anybody who's been a teenager, if you remember, or if you're a parent of teenagers, you know that there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Like 13-year-olds, they're high on their own hormones most of the time, um, still learning how to operate, right? They're in this weird space, right? There's already a lot of anger and a lot of emotions that you don't know how to deal with. Well, add to that your father passing away. And so I was angry. And in that anger, right? And it's not that I didn't have a support system around me, right? I did. I had friends, we had family, all of that kind of stuff. But, I started making some dumb decisions. And as they tend to do, right? I was in violation of rule number one very clearly. Um, Dumb decisions tend to lead to other dumb decisions, right? And kind of just keep going on this cycle of dumb after dumb after dumb, right? Um, and so I reached a point in my life where I didn't really see a future at all, right? Like if you could, the famous questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Man, like for a good 10-year chunk of time, maybe not that long. I'm trying to actually think and do the math here. Probably for a good 5 to 7 years of my life. And it took a while to get there. So it wasn't like as soon as my dad passed away, that kind of thing. It was like into my early 20s, 21, 22, 23, somewhere in there. If you had asked me, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The answer probably would have been, I don't. I don't. Because there was no thought of the future. There was immediacy, right? Maybe thoughts of the next day, possibly of the next week at the furthest, right? Um, and I think about that guy, right? I think about the me that was then, and then I look around now where, you know, even when my dad was alive, right? If I had had a friend like my own kids, I would have thought they were rich. I'm like, whoa, you got a 2-story house? Like, you got phone? Like, of course, at that age we didn't have cell phones, so it would have been the equivalent of, you got a phone in your room? Um, you know, live in a decent neighborhood. All of those kinds of things. I'd have been like, wow, man, y'all got it going on, right? Like that's how I would have thought. And and as a 45-year-old who's married to an amazing woman who has 3 awesome kids, even though they can still be knuckleheads, but that's kids, right? Kids can be knuckleheads. Um, I'm a teacher? Like, really? I'm a teacher. And not just any teacher. I get to teach culinary. I get to go to work and I get to teach high school kids how to make good food. Like, that's crazy to me. Um, and and I look around, I've got a truck, I've got a motorcycle. Can I tell you one of the biggest things that's another story, but I've wanted a motorcycle my whole life. Pretty much. Never got one. I got one now, right? And yes, my truck and my motorcycle are both old and need you know, constant maintenance to keep them running. Thank you, YouTube University, right? Basically, um, for helping me keep these things on the road as much as I can. Um, but sometimes it just feels like I'm living somebody else's life. Like at some point, right, I made a decision and that decision kind of like snuck me in to somebody else's timeline. And it's a weird feeling, you know? I mean, it's great. I look around and there's blessings and it's easy to like to to go, oh well, this is a blessing and this is a blessing, and I say that, but sometimes it's hard because you're like, oh well, there's this happening and this happening and this is tough and this is hard and why, right? Like a true, but it's more of a lament, right, than a complaint. But it's just wild, and it was a wild feeling, and I felt like I should probably share it because I know I can't be the only one, right? There's no possible way that I'm the only person that's out here looking around going, "What? How? How did this happen?" Right? And I mean, I know a lot of it is I stopped making dumb decisions, and I made a couple good ones. One being my wife. Um, you know, calling dibs on her was probably the single greatest thing I could have ever done, outside of my faith. Um, and my faith is the other one, right? And not in some sort of weird, like prosperity gospel kind of way, just kind of like, no, like it got my brain and my decision making, um, kind of straightened out, right? Um, but yeah, that's it, guys. Like if I'm not the only one, like if you feel like some days like you're out here living somebody else's life, but a better life than you should have, right? Or than you ever envisioned, then you're not alone. Like, and it's not you didn't steal somebody else's life unless you did, and identity theft is a crime. But you didn't. You just at some point, like me, stopped being super dumb and started following rule number one, and it worked out, right? And I guess part of it is, if that's you, like it is me, like don't forget that, right? Don't get caught up in the mundane stuff of everyday life and like, yeah, this bill kind of sucks, and um, hey man, not sure how I'm gonna pay for that thing, or whatever, or I got to work a little extra. Like, don't get caught up in that, cause man, you didn't have a future and now you do, and you're living it. Like, prayed for, like, some of us prayed for stuff like this. I didn't know to pray for this. It just happened, right? I guess it was one of those prayers where you just kind of like cry out with your heart, and God's like, "Oh yeah, I got you, dude. You didn't know to pray for it, but I got you, man. I got you." Um, it's wild, and it truly is like a redemption kind of thing. Um, I don't know. It was just a weird feeling and a weird thought, and I wanted to share it. So yeah, that's it, guys. There wasn't a whole lot of point to this, and I know I was kind of rambling, but welcome to Burglar with a W. That's what we're gonna do sometimes. We're gonna ramble, and we're just gonna explore weird thoughts and ideas that pop into our head, because that's what we do, you know. So that's it. I'm gonna go back inside now because it's hot and humid out here. All right, love y'all.